All right. Hey, Jack, how's it going, man? How you doing today? Welcome to the stream.
I'm good, mate. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's I'm excited to have you today. I mean, I'm not really someone that like interviews a bunch of people, so it'll be fun to just kind of have a good casual conversation. But appreciate you taking the time. I got connected to you, and then I mean, like I've always known about you. I never traded checks myself. Obviously, I'm wearing the hat from forever ago. But I'm a big fan from afar and excited to see your thoughts on Reputation in general. Like I saw you had a pretty sweet like repetition to reputation. So I feel like you have a lot of good nuanced perspective for us today.
Yeah, how's my audio now? I just plugged in the proper ear.
It does sound better. It's not like it was terrible before though. You sound good though.
This was the $20 iPhone microphone before. Yeah, I think I mean anything that I have been able to do the last few years, I think is downstream of the idea of reputation, or at least the opportunity to keep doing things is downstream of reputation in some way. Um, and go back even before the crypto Web3 world, this idea of building some kind of reputation on the internet that allows you to do things outside of your job or your location, right? The idea of posting proof of work has been such a massive part of the thing that has unlocked all these different opportunities for me over the last 5-6 years. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, it feels like when you're really close to it, it feels like a really saturated idea, but I think it's still incredibly nascent. This idea
Mm-hmm.
that you can become hyper specialized or known for something and practice it publicly, post a ton of proof around your ability to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
get feedback from people on whatever you're doing. And then over time, that transforms into this network that allows you to try new things and uh, just expand the number of people that you involve in whatever that thing might be. And that's
Mm-hmm.
like NFTs specifically are like way at the tail end of that journey for me, I think.
Yeah.
And probably one of the reasons why anything that I put out in 2021 had a decent reception was because I've been doing this stuff on Instagram and Twitter for a couple of years prior. And this is like the hyper it's like that entire mechanic on steroids, right? When you have markets and money and price discovery and all of these things attached to your reputation, your work, it's
Mm-hmm.
like much more real and much more, like the feedback is much more, well, yeah, I think the feedback is more real. It's way more intense personally to be in that position. There obviously is great upside if you execute well, and like the same the same situation applies in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I've there's not necessarily like to answer your question about, oh, I don't even know if you asked it or this was, we just talked about this privately, but
Mm-hmm.
there's been a lot of attempts at platforms to quantify the idea of reputation, and largely they have been so financialized that it actually has the, not necessarily the inverse effect, but it introduces incentives that
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily translate to
Real reputation.
a proper proxy of reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, I'd like to go back a little bit on your history. And so you had a history outside of Web3 and built like when it comes to people building in Web3, a lot of what gives us the platform to be successful is this concept of our existing credibility or we've built something outside of Web3 before, and you come into the space and you say, here's who I am, here's why you should care about what I'm doing. And it sounds like you had a lot of success with that. I mean, I specifically remember checks, and most people know you from checks. And
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm kind of curious, like, as someone who built something in this space, how do you feel like your reputation changed or was defined by what you delivered in the space? Like everyone knows what it's like to have Web 2 reputation, but like in Web 3, you have these people that are like oh my God, like the price is going up, the price is going down. Like you have to like ignore it sometimes. Other times you have to listen because some people might have good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Like, was it hard to like transition to Web3 and like how people viewed you? Was it easy or hard to drown out some of the noise? Like, what was it like to like think about your perception kind of twisted and that reputation twisted when it came to being a builder or a founder in Web3?
I think some of it is like rose tinted in hindsight. I've been
Mm.
reasonably fortunate in that I haven't had like hordes of like pitchforks or anything like that over the course of the last few years. But you definitely get negative feedback now and again. I think the other interesting thing about the transition from what I was doing previously is all of the work I used to do, like as an art practice, or all of the stuff I used to make and post to social platforms, was all basically in service of another goal. So I'd make these things and then I would get introduced to people that would want to hire me to do consulting work or something like that, right? They're like, these objects are all used as advertising or marketing materials. And then coming into crypto, more specifically Ethereum NFTs, you have this infrastructure that makes those things that used to be like the medium between you and a customer or a client or some kind of engagement, they actually become the objects of value themselves.
Right.
Like they become the product. And in some ways, there's like a freedom in that. Like if you view it, I used to have this thing I tweet out would be like, make one tiny goal that will change your life is make $1 on the internet. And like the idea that over the last couple of years, I think that's got truer and truer, or the amount of friction that exists between you, your ideas, and the work you put out, and like monetization is going lower, whether that's like the X creator payout stuff, the ability for you to like launch these digital objects that people can collect. And there's something like really freeing about that. There's also this like the opposite side of that are these like golden handcuffs. When you get into if you start to view that as like in the traditional art world, piece 2 has to sell for more than piece 1. Piece 3 has to sell for more than piece 2. And if there's ever if that chart ever dips, you're in big trouble, right? Like reputationally speaking, like the market is cooled off on whatever it is you're doing. And if you operate in a world where there's like you have a mouthpiece or a spokesperson that isn't you, like in the case of a traditional artist, you would have a gallery and like auction houses that you work with, and like you're kind of relying on a network of people to build the narrative around your work, or you outsource that to some extent.
Yeah.
And here well, for the most part, people are doing that themselves, which might result in smaller beginnings, right? You have to like, how do I articulate this? It's like, in order to practice something independently, like the gap you have to jump from like, maybe being employed at some reputable business where you have access to these like insane client bases and you're like elevated to the reputation of the company you work for. This is like jumping completely outside of that system and starting from scratch, essentially. And you have to like build up this library, this like proof of work over time. There's so many great metaphors in crypto for, even how the technology is designed that align with not even how I thought about it originally, but in hindsight, it just all makes sense, right? It's like if you show up every day and you have this, in my case, like visual art practice where you take an idea, try and turn it, add some visual context to it, simplify something, try and communicate it more efficiently. If somebody sees you do that 300 times, they trust you to do that. They would like, you're going to either make something, you're going to continue to make things that reflect this moment in time, that either make your art practice more relevant into the future, or you're able to capture an idea at the time it's occurring in a way that, people who are interested in those technologies and that part of culture want to own that moment. I think the transition for me came from taking what I was doing on Instagram and Twitter, which was like just ideas that were interesting to me. How do I turn these into visuals that communicate something useful? And then when I started posting work on Foundation and these NFT platforms, the pieces that did really well were all describing like what's actually happening in that network, or what you're visually capturing this paradigm shift in markets and ownership and the ability to like create digital objects and like transact peer to peer. So I think the reputation piece there is like, you can, I guess, think of that as like a skill practiced in public consistently equals reputation over time.
Yeah. I mean, that's fascinating, right? Like it's, you're kind of like arguing it's like almost merit based, of like merit based, showing up every day. Reputation is not something that you earn just on a whim, but rather something that kind of happens through doing, through proving, I guess.
And it's less fragile that way too, I think. Like you can obviously get reputation by proxy. Like you can enter a environment where people vouch for you from outside that environment. But this is the whole, I guess, the TLDR of the checks thesis is like this ground up idea of verification, where number of network participants that decide this is a good idea sort of proliferate and secure that idea by holding a piece of it. And having the one other part I would say about this, not even the skill component of that of the repetition point, is like, if you're a writer or a designer or an artist or a musician or whatever else, by publishing work, you're kind of outsourcing your mind in this really like bizarre way that has these cumulative effects where people who have been following you for 2 or 3 years have consumed hundreds of pieces of your work or ideas, and there's this like vocabulary that develops between you as a function of that, right? And it's such an incredible shortcut. Like all of the work you do is compounding in ways you don't see, and it's not an immediate process, but it's also like these there's like such an asymmetry to it, where you could be practicing something for 200 days, and then on the 200th day, the thing you make gets airtime or gets distributed or creates network effect. Then you have 199 days of proof behind it. And I think that's kind of what has happened with the crypto art stuff more specifically. And even that happened when checks took off in 2023, because it's such a different scale of network. All of that activity kind of filtered down into my old work. There was like mints that were unfinished, that were hanging around from like 6 months ago or 9 months ago, and that just like it all just cascaded down into those different parts of the network. And that's obviously another incredible part about having a address that you sign your work with, is somebody could just look at that and see, what has this guy been doing for the years prior to this. It's hard to describe it, but I think that gets close to the dynamic of it all.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting. And one of the things that you had tweeted out, included with this, let me just pull it up here, included with today's tweet and session, was this idea of, reputation turns into reputation over time. Repetition, it's almost hard to like ensure that I'm saying it correct. Repetition turns into reputation over time. And what I think is so interesting about this, and really what I want to kind of pick your brain on, is like, in Web3 right now, like we did have this really, really strong showing in like the 2020 to 2023 era of like going from reputation mattering, whether it was you were an artist or you were a new project that was getting started, and you had built successful businesses in the past. Like people were making investment decisions, or they were choosing to spend their time in areas where people had that reputation. And when I think about trading today and how I trade or how I think about making investments in the space, none of those things are backed by reputation anymore. Like, if you think about the meme coin trades of the last 12 to 15 months, you're talking about something that is basically exclusively not the team behind it, but rather the thesis that maybe the meme can catch on, or
like
rather
its organic properties. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no proof of work there. Like, and so I think that's one of the things that's most fascinating. Even if you think about some of the projects that we've seen that are recent, that have launched tokens, if you took Kaido as an example, Kaido has spent a lot of time building a real product. People actually use the product, but we still have a lot of things out there that are kind of limited in terms of proof of a product. And they launch a token, and then eventually maybe you use it, maybe you don't. And I'd be curious, like, I think that if I were to self-reflect, and if I were in your shoes, which I'm obviously not, but I would probably be a little bit frustrated with the past couple of years of the space. And like, man, like, does reputation matter? Does this credibility I have built up? And like, you're in a really good spot with your project, but like, you haven't like abandoned it and run away or anything like that. But it can be frustrating, I think, to kind of look up and see the things that are getting recognized and the things that are getting acknowledged. They just have not been based on reputation over the past couple of years. And so, yeah, I'd be curious how have you viewed the market, and are you optimistic going forward with regards to like people that have reputation getting recognized in the ways you think they should, whether that be in art or projects?
Yeah, well, you know what? I think this may be me just like overfitting this by looking back at how stuff played out. But I think so much of this is downstream of how content is distributed on platforms. So like, I would imagine if you were to try and visualize that, like the following versus what is the thing that's going to keep you looking at the screen for the longest.
Totally,
like platforms have tilted much further in that direction. And I think so much of I can fully acknowledge that so much of the success of Chex and Opepen specifically is down to the fact that everything else was quiet then. 2020, early 2023. These like absolutely turbocharged like rage bait algorithms were not in full effect then. People had notifications on. I was tweeting like 100 times a day, real-time updates of these projects, threading all this stuff together. And there was this captive dynamic there. Like, people give feedback in real time, and these things aren't anywhere near as ephemeral as they were then. And this idea of reputation being a moat, even with these algorithmic changes, is even more true in a lot of ways. It's like there's another thing that I've been thinking about that I don't know if it's accurate or not, but like the LLM cutoff point too. But like if you're in the training data from before 2023, you have an insane advantage, right? If you go into ChatGPT and be like, who is like a notable crypto artist, it's going to give you all of the stuff it was trained on from 2017 to 2021, probably 2022. And that creates this other like synthetic thing that isn't necessarily based on merit, quote unquote. And I would say, like, I used to get this, it's like a tongue-in-cheek meme at this point, where when Chex and Opepen took off originally, people were like, that guy's not an artist, he's a marketer. And I was like, yeah, I spent 10 years working in advertising, figuring out how to make the stuff that I was producing get seen by people. And if you're using the internet as a medium, like, I would argue that that's like part of your quote unquote job, right? You're trying to get people to look at your work. And merit is a very tricky word in the context of like, what skill set are you evaluating? Like, can somebody paint something better than I can? 1000%. Like most like hand-based art craft, I would be very, very low on the list there.
Right.
But do I have 5 or 6 years understanding how to like get people to pay attention to what you're doing on the internet? Yes. And hopefully are these projects like thoughtful commentary on the world and what's going on in culture at the time and the changes that are happening in markets and memes and all these things? Hopefully, yes, too. But there's this incredible dance between those two worlds. And yeah, this like it's such a it is so downstream of how the platforms work. And in a really unfortunate way, this may be like total cope from me, is like there is not necessarily a incentive to be truthful in order to get reach, which I'm sure you've grappled a good amount with. You know, the idea that the vast majority of stuff that gets reach or is amplified is intentionally misleading or you know, you like absolutist in a way clicks. That's exactly like just the same way as like a magazine at the front of the grocery store has some like absolutely made up thing and under the guise of entertainment, right?
It's interesting that you say that, because when it comes to like something like tabloids versus newspapers, like you 100% understand the difference. Okay, 99% of people understand the difference, right? Yeah, you look at the newspaper, you look at the tabloid, and you're like, okay, I know that like one of these things is designed to get me to click, and it's more about drama than like this other thing, which is about facts. And what are those things built on? Well, reputation and credibility, right? Like the Wall Street Journal cannot continue to be credible if it's spouting fake, false news. And I feel like what's interesting about the anonymous or pseudonymous world that we live in and the way that the algorithms work right now is there are very few people that feel that need to be credible in how they tweet about things. And it's, you know, so much so that like, there were plenty of tweets that were going around last week that were like 100% absolutely fake. And they still get blown up. And because of the way that we and Twitter rewards with literal dollars, like there's incentive to tweet fake things, right? Like if you get a tweet that's fake, but it gets 100,000 views, you'll get paid, you know, a couple $100 for it, $150 or $100 for it, right? You have
and supposed to be incentive. Yeah, there's supposed to be that community note. Right. Like if it gets community noted, it gets demonetized somehow. But I'm sure that's a really difficult problem to solve too, obviously. And there's a lot of stuff slipping through that is, I mean, in some cases, I'm like, I wonder if it's even. You can draw the like contrast between true and false, but it's even more nuanced than that, where it's just like sensationalist or like it's kind of rewarding the ability to get attention versus keep it, right? And like that, you can see how content has just like taken that turn in the last couple of years, like really aggressively across every single platform. Even like if you look at your follower graph, the vast majority of people, I was very fortunate to like make this pivot during COVID, where I was running not a brick and mortar business, but a like one-to-one business, right? Where you have relationships with 4 or 5 clients, and then you transition that to the internet. And in that moment in time where everybody's at home, everybody's looking at the computer all day, like trying to figure out when this stuff's going to reopen, how much of my life is going to be impacted by this. I'm going to like think long and hard about how I'm going to make my work digital. And that was like a massive inflection point in the reach that I was able to build. And then the way platforms work is like that, well, not even the way platforms work, culture, everything has changed a good amount in that amount of time. And this idea of interest-based stuff being the way you consume things, it puts way more, it almost like there is this paradox here, because I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, who would I choose to follow? Like I could see something really entertaining or smart, and the people you follow, the bar is so much higher now.
Right.
And one good analogy for me is like a comedian. Well, like you want to see that person tell another joke because they have a great sense of humor. Or if somebody writes like an incredible piece of long form content that like shows they have an amazing understanding of a market or reality or whatever it is you're interested in, you're like, I want to read something else. But like it's almost like the content has to imply that person has such a specific focus that you know what you're going to get next time, if that makes sense. The dynamic of it has changed really massively, where it used to be enough to kind of stick to a format, or you'd get like a good amount of exposure as a function of just like the network that you'd built. But now it's like it's going through a totally different set of parameters before it's being shown to the world, essentially.
Yeah, I feel like my observation of the For You page and the content that I'm fed every day, it has definitely changed over the past couple of years. And I actually think it is absolutely for the worse when it comes to crypto Twitter, in the sense of all you have to do is engage with someone once, and you will then start getting fed more and more of their content, and it just snowballs. And what ends up happening is you get very few contrarian views, and you end up in this echo chamber of things that you want to see. And that's maybe okay on your Instagram reels, where you're like, yeah, I just want to like sit back, kick my feet up, and watch a comedian tell a joke or something. But when it gets into like you making financial decisions about deciding to buy something or sell something, you create an echo chamber for yourself. And that algorithm, I am always kind of cautious about like tinfoil hatting the algorithm, because people get into this like, well, the algorithm is like this magical thing and we don't know how it works, and it's like haunting me or something. But the reality of it is like, and part of my inspiration of Ethos and why we were building it is I believe there are people that are very good at taking advantage of that fact. There are people that are very good at understanding, just like SEO optimization in the 2000s, they're very good at understanding how to do that, how to optimize this such that you are fed the content that you don't know you want to be fed, but are being fed. And I think that's a really important part of reputation ultimately. And I'll kind of transition this now into talking about Ethos, because I'd like to get your take on some of the things that you've heard and seen so far. But again, some of the original inspiration was, wow, like not only is the algorithm changed, but like an undeniable fact on CT and crypto in general is people say one thing and do something different. And so quick question for you though, did you participate in Friend Tech at all? Were you on Friend Tech?
No.
I don't remember seeing your name there. What was your like opinion from afar? Because this would have been October or August 2023, so you would have been still pretty hot on your project, and I'm sure people were asking to get on Friend Tech.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a really different it's a subtle difference, but it's maybe it look or sounds subtle, but it's very like it's a profound difference in like the financial relationship to you as a person versus the things you make, right?
I like it. Yeah,
and
totally.
That is the thing that's always been like a, if you can, it's why these particularly like the networked projects that we've made as Visualize Value the last couple of years have clearly defined what they are and how people can participate, and have not promised that we'll come up with a new idea every week, because we won't. And if we did, they would not be good ideas, right?
Yeah, we just dilute everything. Yeah.
And I think the Friend Tech thing, the main if I understand this from looking from the outside, is the most valuable access on there was people who were essentially picking in, like this is going to be the thing that runs next. Follow me into this thing. It becomes this like self-fulfilling like feedback loop that eventually implodes on itself, right?
Right.
And it's just all of these different mechanics that are trying to basically outrun economic reality, essentially. Is like at a certain point, these things kind of consume themselves because the value can never match what, how do I say this in a, like, to be completely accurate? It's like it's tied to somebody, like that subtle difference of it being your name versus an object you produced and that persists without you and that does not require you to, you know,
Knowingly
provide
participate,
new,
or
yeah, provide new information, or it's like it's kind of a really different dynamic even than like an artwork that evolves, right? That can happen thoughtfully and still requires people to continue to work on their craft. But the vast majority of these things are like can be accomplished with the tools that exist outside of this world, like, and that probably gives a better signal as to who actually wants to participate, like a Substack subscription, right? Where
yeah,
I love the price discovery aspect of crypto, but if it's in this, if it's like in relation to something that is extremely like, I don't know if it's like not concrete. I'm not even sure how I would define that, but I just knew looking at the dynamic of that, I'm like, I could never like possibly satisfy this over the long term.
right.
It's like there's going to come a point where somebody else more interesting than you for the next week means that the people that, you know, thought that you were the most interesting person are getting burned in the process. And I don't know, like I'm conflicted about this because I do think all these models are interesting and like experimenting with how value moves around on the internet and the fact that people do create valuable things that other people want to own is why I've just stuck to this way closer to the like world of these objects, NFTs specifically, where there's hundreds of people that I will collect work from and have zero expectation to ever hear from them again, or, you know, there's no there's just a different mentality that surrounds those things that I don't think it can't persist healthily, right? You can't have, what's the Charlie Munger? It's the like the iron rule of life is only 20% of people can be in the top fifth.
Right.
Like the platforms that tell you anything other than that are obviously not being truthful.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really like, I really appreciate the like more abstract view on some of these things, because obviously the reason I bring Friendtech up is it inspired some of the stuff that we've built with Ethos. And I felt like one of the things that Friendtech really struggled with was this concept of being overly speculative. And when it's overly speculative, yeah, I mean, I felt I was one of the top keys on Friendtech. I believed in it so much. And then you felt this like need to just consistently deliver. And it felt very ephemeral or fleeting. Like you're constantly just feeling like, oh my God, am I doing enough? Are these people care enough? And that is definitely not what reputation is, right? Reputation, to your point earlier, is it's doing the same thing over time. It's proving the work. It's not something that should feel like, I mean, yeah, it could disappear in a second, but primarily because you did something wrong or you stepped out of line, not because you stopped doing. And so, yeah, it will be interesting to kind of get your take more on Ethos specifically. But I would be curious to start with, like, what is your perspective on Ethos so far? Like, what I'm sure you've seen the site, you have some familiarity with it, but like, and you've heard like people have mentioned it to you, but like, what is your perspective on Ethos? Are you skeptical? Have you looked at it before? Like, how are you thinking about Ethos before we go dive into it?
one thing I would say more broadly is
Mhm.
since like 2023 or so, where I've had like there is more stuff with my signature on it in
Mhm.
more people's hands or wallets or wherever you want to call it. I've just taken a way more cautious approach to like experimenting with anything. And
Yeah.
it's way quieter now than it was then, but like in 2021, oh sorry,
Mhm.
2023, or like when that that real season of like attention was at its highest,
Mhm.
it really felt like people would not be
It would be damaging
people
to you, I
yeah,
think. I
people
would
would
have
not
been.
do due diligence to the extent where like your name attached to something, even if it wasn't you, and there was a lot of that
Right.
going on as well.
Mhm.
People would, um yeah, speculate on things that I do not have a full understanding of, and I want to stay away from
Mhm.
that. I would say
That makes
like, yeah, from what I've seen of the platform, like it's a very solid idea, and I particularly love the like overlay on the context of Twitter, right? That's
sense. Mhm.
the thing that the thing that initially, I think, from being a skeptic of any platform that exists outside of social, because it's just,
Mhm.
a game that's being played elsewhere. And these, like, there's an art in that. Like, how do you build a platform that
Mhm.
benefits from the network effects of these like social giants? I would argue that it's like almost impossible to get somebody to go to a website other than Twitter very frequently if you don't
Yeah.
have like an incredibly thoughtful relationship between what you're doing and these platforms where people spend 99% of their screen time. So
Mhm.
I would say I appreciate that from a product design perspective. And then after that, it's just I understand what it takes to maintain attention in crypto. And so many products and teams have started in one direction, gotten you to
Mhm.
sign and create something, and then
Mhm.
the rules of the game have changed in a way that are not consistent with what you signed up for.
Yeah.
And something that is like meant to represent your reputation long term, like having the most amount of control over that possible is just I'm not this is not necessarily a critique. This is just the way I have thought about it
Yeah.
for such a long time, which prevents me from even going like massively um into analyzing anything in
Mhm.
that world, is just as like a rule of thumb. That's like, okay, so this somebody's going to have to monetize somewhere along the line, and my what is my role and my staked reputation, let's say, in that process.
Yeah. I think that's a very, very fair critique, especially from someone that has existing reputation, right? If you're like, I mean, one, what do I need to prove to anyone? Two,
Mm-hmm.
I think taking the like both mature and nuanced perspective of like, am I the product? Are they
Mm-hmm.
using me as leverage basically to gain something on my platform? Like it sucks, but crypto is like that, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
and the world works that way to some degree too. It's just, is it a fair trade?
right. And so I guess like there are a few different ways to think about ethos. Like one is like, well, how do you yourself build that reputation up? Versus you who I think already has a lot of reputation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There are other ways like, okay, how does someone that doesn't have any of that reputation present themselves on ethos and look like someone that is more credible than maybe other people recognize them for, which to be fair is very difficult because reputation is in a lot of ways very local. But the last piece is kind of helping people understand like, hey, this person has done something that's like maybe like stepped out of line a little bit, maybe
Mm-hmm.
not the most friendly thing, or absolutely straight up rug pulled someone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd like to think it is interesting because I think most people kind of look at ethos and they have their own perspective of it, of like, oh, like how does it impact me, or how can I get value out of it? And it was very cool to hear you say like, yeah, when I use the Chrome extension, or if I've seen the Chrome extension where
Mm-hmm.
you have the overlays, and that really helps. I'm glad to hear that. Now it's kind of like, it's interesting because one of the components of Ethos is really the fact that like you are on Ethos whether you've opted in to be
Mm-hmm.
on Ethos or not. Have you ever come and look at your profile before to see what people have said? I wouldn't be mad if you said no.
No, I have. I have. Our mutual friend that got this stream happening has
Yeah.
sent me many a link, and I've checked it out a bunch of times. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that is one of the cool benefits is like, you know, Ethos isn't making any money on your name. We do build a better understanding, although I would argue that you are underrepresented right now on Ethos. We help people build an understanding of like, well, what do people think about you?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
that can go ahead, sorry.
I say sorry to interrupt. I would also being transparent, like
Mhm.
if you scroll back up to the top of this,
Yeah.
Maybe I had some subconscious reaction to this where I'm like, how is my participation in this going to change my reputation? And I know you guys have mechanics that exist within this platform that I'm not aware of. And to your point, if I'm being represented anyway, like does me opting in
help you and
change that signal? Yeah. And does it have any chance of attaching me to something that I didn't agree to in the future?
Yeah. And I think it's really helpful to get the latter there because it's not really something that's easy for most, like at least me in my position to consider. It's like, I joyfully believe that every single person wants to opt in, right? But there are plenty of reasons people don't want to opt into it. And it is interesting because if you really think about it, yeah, like you already have reputation. We actually do have a change that's coming in soon that would boost your reputation because you have a lot of reputable followers on Twitter. It's not something we show right now, but that would bring you up to reputable, which is way more in line with what you actually are. What's interesting is like you participating in theory, it doesn't necessarily absolutely get you something, but being able to connect you with a wallet in the future will be something that I think could be beneficial. And so what we are trying to get to is like, hey, these people have reviewed you, they vouched for you. You have, people have vouched 0.443 ETH against your name. It's just staking it. So it's just putting money, they can pull it out at any point in time. What I want is, next time you have an on-chain interaction, if you were to set up your account and participate, and you did use that wallet, that one wallet that you connected, maybe it was just for Ethos, it gave you some sort of unlocks on chain. It says, this is Jack. He's reputable for these reasons. Maybe he gets a cheaper fee on Uniswap v4, and next time he trades, he doesn't have to pay as much because he's a real user and he actually participates in stuff and he does all of these things. And or maybe it's for whatever reason you want to go get a loan on chain or something. And it's like, well, look, Jack, you never did anything on Ethos, but you are reputable and that's recognized. And I think a lot of people miss that, sometimes it's, yeah, I want to be able to identify you as a reputable person, but also like, we want to be able to say Jack and this other group of 1,000 people are real people. And this group of 100,000 wallets that is trying to look like a real person, they're not real at all, man. Like they're just like completely fake. Right. And this group over here, this group of like, known like scammers or people that have like knowingly done something wrong, we really don't want to have them have those benefits. And so I would like to think that at some point it would be an absolute no-brainer for you to participate with like trying to combat your two objections of like, you will get some value out of it and on chain, and it's obvious to you that like this isn't going to turn into something where like people are speculating on you or people are trying to make money or people are trying to turn or you signing up turns you into like, oh, hey, by the way, Jack, we created a token for you and everyone's trading on you. Like, you know what I mean?
And that, to be clear, that's my objection. Like that would be my like where the majority of my objection comes from. And to your other point of like, if you're starting out, I see no reason why you wouldn't use this. You know, it's
Right.
like there becomes this like moment in time where even, you know, in the course of checks minting, right? But there's like frenzies of attention around what you're doing, and you don't maybe have the opportunity to interact with every single person that's looking at your work.
Mhm.
And the proxy of your reputation at that time is not necessarily, I wouldn't even say not necessarily accurate. It's just like a reflection of this imbalance of attention that you have in both directions.
Right.
And yeah, I don't, my main objection or aversion is always
Mhm.
with this, like, oh, one day this is going to turn into a betting platform that
Right.
that
Right.
it wasn't when you started. That's really
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
big point of
And
contention, and why I've like not spent tons of time digging into it.
yeah, I mean, the reality of human nature is like, unless we like, you look at things a little bit differently because of where you are in your career or your platform that you have on Web3. But like, the reality of human nature is like, we are not going to give time to things that don't have obvious benefit to us, right?
Hmm.
And to be honest, I don't expect you to. Like, the only reason I would expect you to is if it was obvious you got some value out of it. Of course, obviously, like if you felt like it was safe, like it wasn't something that you were just gonna get cornered into one day. But I think the main thing that Ethos kind of helps people change how they think about things is the altruistic side of it, or the idea of being able to give back and say, hey, you, Jack, you have reputation, and you know what, you're working with this new guy. Maybe it's an intern that's doing clips on streams, or maybe it's a new artist that you're excited about. Your ability to give back and
Yeah,
support
yeah.
other people, like, that's where that's where I think, I don't expect every user to do that at all. In fact, I expect less than 1% of our users to actually contribute, just like you would on Wikipedia or Yelp or something like that. But that's where I think one of the other beauties of it is like, hey, if you really wanted to, you have this reputation. That actually means you have a bigger impact than other people when you go review
Hmm.
them or when you go vouch for them. And so your ability to kind of give back and say like, hey, I'm working with this person, I want to show the world that they're reputable, I think could be something that will appeal to
That's
people
interesting.
outside. Yeah.
You know what? That's interesting, and I think there is this really odd. Uh, I wouldn't describe it as a vacuum, but like there's something about like retweeting work or projects, or like
Yeah.
the endorsement that's implied in these social platform interactions that
Mhm.
is maybe taken in a different context in a platform that is purely about reputation and doesn't necessarily um yeah, I'm not explaining that very well, but I think you get my point. It's like if you are able to do that in the context of an environment that's only about measuring reputation, as opposed to
Right.
like, hey, go, like, I'm implying that everybody should go and do this thing because I
Right.
think it's going to be X, Y, and Z in this amount of time. I'm not doing that. And
Yeah.
like, there are people that I would love to give flowers and shout outs and things
Mhm.
to on Twitter, but it leads to things that are not optimal for me or that person. Or at least like
Mhm.
a couple years ago, it really wasn't the case, you know, where like, oh, I think you should go and collect from this person because they're
Right.
interesting. And then
Yeah,
somebody
like it's
goes and
too
buys
much
a
of an
thousand of
endorsement.
them, and it's like,
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah.
you're an
Yeah.
idiot. Like this is not what I'm saying at all. And you know, freedom
It's
to
funny how that
transact and all
works.
these. It's just silly though, and
It's
it prevents
funny.
you from doing that. It prevents you from like
Right.
putting your reputation in certain places.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that is one of the risks eventually is like you get into a hot market and all of a sudden people are going to be looking at your like, people scan like, oh God, like Jack just followed this new project, right? Like, we got to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
like
yeah.
buy it, or like, oh, I looked at his blog
Thankfully,
and he
it's not
bought
really
this.
like that anymore. That's one of the good things about things cooling off. It's like, yeah, it's much better.
And but I do think like that is one of the downsides is like when the market gets really hot, it just turns so speculative. But you can support people. Yeah, with artists, I feel like in a hot market, if you were to go like positively review an artist, right, you spend no money
Mm-hmm.
to do it. You just say something really nice about some up and coming artist that you're excited about. That actually could be one of the best signals, because it's not like sometimes on Twitter it feels like people are just like shouting from the rooftops, like, "Hey, I
Mm-hmm.
love this thing. You should go buy them," right? Like,
Yeah.
and in this case, it's more of a like, "Hey, I'm just like supporting someone that I like and believe in them." And there's not a lot of that in Web3, to be honest. Like, there's definitely not a lot of it that comes without bias in a lot of cases, because for
Mm-hmm.
every one Jack that's worried about that, there are like 10, meme coin callers that are like happy to lean into that idea. So, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into how we're thinking about it, because yeah, I feel like people would love to have your endorsement as maybe as a top collector, right? Like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this guy has been in my community for a very long time. They've been a pleasure to work with. They've never asked anything of me. I just enjoy their presence. They give me feedback. Like, that can go a long way for someone that other people may otherwise have no idea who that is.
Mm-hmm.
And could be compelling for another artist to be like, oh, that's cool. This guy's interested in collecting some of my art. I'd like to be able to like have them collect my art because Jack said that it was a good art collector or an art,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be.
No,
Um,
that makes sense.
it's just hard because sometimes in Web3, like everything gets so easily misconstrued, and so like we've really tried to avoid overly leaning into that, to be honest. Um, because yeah, at the end of the day, everything's going to get farmed. Everything is going. People are going to try to like, honestly, one of Ethos's biggest problems right now is actually, let's go back to your profile. I guarantee if I like sort by score, like you have a lot of good stuff up here, right? Like people
Mm-hmm.
talked about a lot of stuff, vouch for you. You scroll down the list to like people that are less reputable, and like literally by score, like there's some good stuff in here, but there's also like a bunch of just AI slop, right? Like,
Mm.
oh, I just like wrote this thing because it's free
Right.
and I may as well. And that can be a pretty a good intern account. Like, what is this? Like, I don't know what this
Mm-hmm.
means, right? Um, and yeah, so we do have people that are going out there and downvoting and upvoting, and everything is like a score, and every score is tied together and stuff. We've tried to really think about that, but yeah,
It's a hard
like
problem. So props
it
for
is a
that.
hard
Yeah.
problem. Even like we hide people that are below a certain score, and while this might be true and you might appreciate that review, like other people are like, this came from someone who doesn't have very much reputation.
Mm.
Oh, it looks like they got slashed even.
Questionable.
Yeah.
Questionable. Can
Yeah.
you explain the slashing to me? I'm curious how you think about that.
Yeah. So the way that slashing works is it's really meant to be a consensus mechanism where you say like, yeah, there you go. We've all reviewed this guy negatively. Yeah, this guy was clearly Farby Ethos, basically.
Yeah.
This was just kind of a weak slashing, so I'll try to pull up something that's more interesting here. When you look at the way that slashing has worked, it's meant to be, again, a consensus mechanism where people provide insight into why someone has stepped out of line. Basically, you're making a judgment call that someone has stepped out of line. Maybe it's that this guy, who is a very well-known and very well-documented scammer, has done something again, and you put up some of your credibility score in a bond, so you could lose it basically if you don't get enough
Mm-hmm.
votes. So you have risk.
Mm-hmm.
And you use consensus to prove like, oh yeah, it goes through a 48-hour voting period, and people vote on if they think that person should be slashed and lose credibility score, or if they should be defended and not lose credibility score.
Okay, interesting. Oh, that's great.
So it's meant to be like a point in time too thing. Like, one of the other things that we probably both know very well is like the spaces basically has a memory of a goldfish.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't remember anything. And even sometimes I'll go back and look at stuff on Ethos, and I'm like, I should go leave this guy a review. And then I look back, I'm like, oh, I already did that. Oh my God, I completely
Mm-hmm.
forgot. I like said this thing forever ago about this person. And yeah, like you can scroll through some of these slashes here. There's some really good ones in here. There's stuff that I don't agree with. Like Polymarket got
Mm-hmm.
slashed the other day, and I felt like it was
Mm.
unnecessary. So yeah, we use it as a way to like capture everyone's attention, 48 hours. People go vote on it. There's no incentive to vote. There's no incentive to participate. And it just gives us a little bit better understanding of like how people are feeling at that point in time. Revolving games is a big one that people are recently very upset with. And yeah, you can see it's reflected in their kind of like consensus algorithm. Yeah. Yeah, this is the poly market.
Very interesting. So there's no upside for the person proposing the slash,
right.
Or they get
There's
some
no
reputational. They don't. It's just,
they don't get anything. Yeah, we've
wow,
tried to really be careful with how we incentivize things because it's like I mean, for lack of a better description, you don't want to incentivize murder, right? If you incentivize murder, then people will die. So don't incentivize the wrong thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You want to make sure you're incentivizing the right things, which is like bringing good information forward or commenting on things. And we haven't actually incentivized any of that, but we're trying to learn from it right now and better understand, you know, what that sort of incentivization could look like in the future for us. But yeah, I mean, people have really, really detailed responses on here. I even put that I was disappointed in the results of the slash. Like I've tried to go through and yeah, I mean, like you got Pete here is like, you guys are absolute morons. Like, and like, yeah, people that agree with it, people that don't agree. I agreed with it, right? Like, so it's very interesting. But again, everything is weighted. Everything is, you know, when you have reputation, you actually have a significantly higher number of votes versus someone who's neutral. And yeah, so anyways, that's the kind of high level general concept of slashing.
Great, man. Yeah, it's cool.
Well, we are running up at the end of the hour. So I really wanted to use the time to kind of, again, chat reputation with you, take some input of like, hey, why might you be skeptical? Why would, like, I think it's plenty reasonable in your position to be skeptical, and hopefully sell you on the idea of why it might matter in the future, why it might be something worth paying attention to. But yeah, I mean, it's been great to kind of chat with you and think about reputation from a different lens, one that was extremely powerful, that like your reputation, the reputation of artists and NFT people, you know, in 2022, 2023 was 2021, 2020 was incredibly important.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly hard problem to solve, but you got like shying away from the direct monetization of it. And, you know, the idea of reputation as capital in itself, I think, is kind of where you're.
That's right.
I mean, that's what it feels like when I look at the even the interface.
Turning it into something like, quantifiable. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, as soon as you introduce, what's that quote? It's like, some people are so poor, all they have is money.
Right.
Like the idea that as soon as you introduce that, it just, I mean, maybe there's some level of reality reflected in it, but it introduces these mechanisms that are just, it's blinding in a lot of ways. And the times, like the time it takes for the market to find truth when money is involved is almost like, you know, it has this blinding effect or this muddying effect, at least in the short term. And then, you know, a weighing kind of machine eventually, right?
Yeah, and those are like the two things we are pushing up against is like, how do you not become too speculative on one side, and then how do you not become just an absolute farm on the other side, where people just write you know, AI reviews and stuff. And so I think we found pretty good middle ground. But to be completely frank, like it takes a lot of adapting. We have changed the algorithm a lot. We have witnessed people abuse it. We've tried to abuse it ourselves just to get it to like break in certain ways. And but I think we're getting to a much better state. And yeah, man, I appreciate you taking the time to come up here and chat with me about it. I think it was good for all of the viewers that we had, to get to know kind of how you think about reputation, and super valuable for anyone paying attention to learning about ethos too. So thanks for the time.
Yeah, man, thank you. I appreciate your time, and it's impressive, man. It's a beautiful product too. It's not easy to build these things, so well done.
The audience does seem to think that you will be joining after this, so we'll see if you take Shat's invite or not. But yeah, I wasn't paying as much attention to the chat, but people were pretty enthusiastic about your opinions and trying to catch up on that. So maybe you'll join.
All right, cool. Yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Much appreciated. I'll go scroll the comments now.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it. And everyone else, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining. All 1,640 views that we got. It's pretty awesome.
Love it, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Peace.